The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
We are always so happy to have Tennessee Department of Education in the room with us because they are the ones that lead us, and we appreciate their willingness to come and share their time. They'll give you some updates, but y'all, this is your opportunity to speak directly to the leaders in Tennessee Department of Education and ask questions. This is your opportunity, all right? I'd like to introduce Ms. Susan Ussery and Dr. April Ebinger. And I believe Allison Gall may be here today.
She may be.
Yes. She may have been delayed, but Ms. Allison Gall also is scheduled to be here, so we hope she'll be able to make it. But meanwhile, we have two key leaders right here in the department supporting special education. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Good afternoon. This is a great crowd. We're always so grateful to be asked to come and join the SPED collaboratives annually. And just have an opportunity to be in front of educators that we don't always have an opportunity to do in our day-to-day roles, and just answer questions, share the initiatives that we're working on that also impact you in the school district. So we are going to just really go over what we are working on currently, and then share some resources that you may or may not know about, and then have an opportunity for you to just answer, or for us to answer any questions you might have.
And may I say too, Susan, before we get started, we'll do our titles, but Dr. Clark mentioned that you may not have an opportunity to ask TDOE anything. We are always available to consult with you. Sometimes we feel like we are kind of this away, nebulous place that you can't reach out to, but I think at the end of this, we have our contact information. I know my work, I'm the Director of Psychological and Behavioral Services, so I oversee all things around evaluation eligibility, not only under IDA, but Section 504, behavior support, also dabble in mental health support. So anytime you have questions, concerns, need anything, if I am not the person to go to, then I'm going to direct you to the right person. So please reach out as you need to. I will encourage you, a lot of times your special education directors want to also be informed that you're reaching out to us. So please make sure you're looping them in. If there's a chain of command that you need to adhere to, please do that. But we are here to support you and make sure that you're able to implement federal and state requirements. Did you want to say what your role is?
Yeah, probably good to introduce ourselves. So I am Susan Ussery. I'm the Senior Director of Special Education Programs. We have a team of about 10 of us under special education programming. So it is a pretty small but mighty team responsible for the programmatic side of IDEA and implementation of special education. We of course have other teams within our division that support that with regard to compliance, federal program oversight, and our data team as well. But we are more the technical assistance, content development, guidance, like April said, the people that you call if you have questions about IEPs or eligibility or evaluation, some of just the day-to-day programmatic pieces of your roles, we're here to support that. And then I'll let April introduce herself.
Oh, I did already. Yeah. But I do want to again encourage you. We were talking on the way here. There has been such an exponential rise in advocates and attorneys being involved in what you do on a day-to-day basis. Our jobs at the department is not to necessarily intervene on those cases, but we can absolutely help mediate and give you the guidance that you need to be able to feel empowered to go back to those meetings knowing what you know. Sometimes we have advocates and attorneys who also call us, and we get the privilege of educating them on what actually state and federal law says, even though our advocates and attorneys sometimes feel differently. And then certainly are in meetings with you where they like to kind of puff their chests a little bit at you and your staff. That's why we're here. So please reach out to if you need any support on that front. We would love, 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 love to support you in that way, and your staff. And that goes with your EAs, to your SLPs, anybody, even your general education teachers needs to be a part of this learning opportunity and these processes to understand how to best support students, but then also how to really combat some of the misinformation that is out there.
And I did not bring an org chart, but I'll get to in a minute just kind of the buckets of work that our team is responsible for. But this is just a quick snapshot of the overview of education in Tennessee. Not special education specific, but as you can see, the percentage of students with disabilities is listed there, in addition to also the percentage of students who are English learners and those who are economically disadvantaged. So I do want to do a quick call out that we are really targeting those subpopulations in the work at the department, not just in special education, but across the department, and improving literacy specifically in those three subpopulations with the Acceleration for All initiative. So starting in September, we've already been doing some work in it, but we're also going to be offering some more district convenings, district leader opportunities, and then eventually modules for educators. And it's really about bringing high quality instructional materials to students that are in those subpopulations to make sure that they have access, equitable access to Tier 1 instruction, and that we're holding them to high expectations, and that there's meaningful collaboration happening between general education and then the leaders who also support these other students to make sure that everybody is achieving. So we're doing a lot of work around that right now, which is a big piece of also what we're doing just in collaboration with our other academics teams. And then we pull this every year, just the child count of disabilities that are pulled on December 1st. And these are students who have a current disability on this date. And so I will, and you can probably speak to this historically, I don't believe that the prevalence has changed much as far as the leading disability category. SLD tends to be the leader in our state and has been for some time, followed closely by SLI.
So we've actually seen a little bit of an uptick back for SLD. So our national rate for SLD is around 35%. So we're still far under the national rate of SLD identification. But I do believe it's a lot of work that our team is doing with our assessment specialists. We had a huge drop off after the implementation of RTI for SLD diagnosis. We're starting to see a little bit of a bump back up. So the previous year, the December 1, 2023 count, SLD was sitting around 25%, and you'll notice that there's about a 2% increase, which is good news for us. We were seeing the gap between SLI and SLD narrow, which we were afraid, and rightly so, that SLI would overtake SLD, which has never happened in any state in the country ever. And so we really wanted to acknowledge and make sure that our practices around SLD diagnosis and eligibility were really kind of streamlined, which I think we're doing through our updates to our eligibility standards that's happening right now. So if you're not aware, all 16 of our eligibility standards are going through a review process. If you are an assessment specialist or have any knowledge of assessment eligibility standards, our third task force will be starting in August, September, if you're interested in joining that. But those standards will be out for state board approval. So our state board, our current eligibility standards, many of you may or may not know this, are in guidance. They are not in policy or rule. So we are moving those into policy rule to give them a little bit more teeth behind them. But our first read will be next fall in 2026, promulgated and then implemented in fall of 2027. And essentially what that means, how many of you are special education teachers? How many of you are assessment specialists? How many of you are district admin? And I know we have 3 EAs. Am I missing anybody? Principals, anybody? Essentially what that means for moving that our standards from guidance to policy or rule is now they are grievable. Meaning that if, let's say you as a special education teacher, and many of you may or may not be aware of this, but special education teachers are required evaluation participants for almost every single evaluation eligibility area. Meaning that you have to play a role in identifying disabilities because you are the experts. You live and breathe disabilities every single day. So if you're not involved in that process, that is now grievable. So we want to make sure that you guys are aware of those changes and that you are also trained on what those changes are as we go into that fall of 2027.
It's a great opportunity if you are interested as an assessment specialist to join those task force. I did it before I came to the department when I was working in a district, and it was a great opportunity to be able to collaborate with other colleagues across the state and really dig into your professional standards, evaluation standards, and just be a part of change, really, you being the experts in evaluation. So I encourage you, if you're interested, to do that.
Yeah, reach out to me if you are interested and you're an assessment specialist. The last round, so we've done 11 standards of eligibility up until this point. The last round will include ID, FD, MD, orthopedic impairment, and somebody give me who knows, Devola probably knows. Let me say them one more time. Oh, TBI. So if you're interested in any of those areas or have expertise as a special educator, we will be willing to consider your application. It is a paid position to join our task force.
These are the buckets of work I was talking about. We've really kind of nibbled on some of these a little bit, but again, our team of really, it's 9 of us that are kind of content experts. So I wish I had an org chart and I didn't include that, but I will let you know, we are led by the Assistant Commissioner of Special Education and Student Supports. So Dr. Jordan oversees the special education programming side, the IDEA data team, and then the, what are they called? Student support team, which makes up learning acceleration, high dosage tutoring, and then also EL and RTI dyslexia. So she oversees the gamut of student supports. April and I represent special education, and then on our team, we have specialists. Dr. Gauld, who could not be here today, is our low incidence senior manager of low incidence and professional development, and she oversees Catherine Bledsoe, who is an amazing expert in secondary transition and supporting students in high school, and then also Jamie Seek, who is a fantastic speech language pathologist and is leading all of the work around speech language and related services at the department. And then I'll let April kind of talk about her team.
Yeah, so Julie Lane is our Senior Manager of Complex Behavior. She is a school psych by trade, but just came on board about 2 weeks ago. And then if you're not familiar, we also have an initiative, a school-based mental health grant, really around the recruitment and retention of school counselors, school psychs, and school social workers in our rural districts. And so we have Sherry Smith and Tracy Hall, who are our school counseling coordinator and our school social work coordinator at the department, who sit on my team. So anytime you have any questions around that, we can certainly assist you. And when we're thinking about, I know that we have 3 EAs in the room. Any chance you guys are in preschool classrooms? I really would love for you guys to take back a new initiative in the state is if you have EAs who are working in those 619 classrooms, they're eligible right now for a certification program through the Department of Ed. They will be paid to go through the certification program, and then at the completion of the certification program will be paid $1,000 if they complete the program. And it's really giving those EAs the tools that they need to be successful. I know our Assistant Commissioner, Misty Moody, likes to say no longer will we want EAs in our preschool classrooms washing tables. They really are instructional experts in the room and should be seen as such, but we want to give them the training and skills to go out there. So if you go back to your schools and you know that you have some EAs that are working in those preschool settings that you would like to be part of this program, let me put you in touch with Misty Moody and Dr. Amanda Mason, who can get you the information for your EAs to get that certification. And by the way, this is not for licensed teachers. This is only for those bachelor's level EAs, or not bachelor's level, the ones who have a high school diploma, GED, that are working in your schools, not those who have college degrees.
I failed to mention we have another person on the team that just started, and I'm so sorry that I didn't mention her, Christy Hunt. She is almost a counterpart to Allison's work under low incidence, and she's going to be really supporting specially designed instruction more tied to high incidence disabilities. What does it look like to implement special education in a tier 1 classroom for students with more high incidence disabilities? So she just came on board. It was, I think, a week before Julie did. So she's, they're still kind of getting their feet wet and trying to learn their roles. But we really, really feel like that's an area that we need to focus on. It's just, what is that implementation? What does that look like? How do we improve goals for students so that they can make progress in the general education curriculum? How are we helping educators know that special education is not separate from, but a part of tier 1 and content? And so we need to make sure that those students have access to it. So that's really what she's going to be tasked with, is a lot of that guidance. And we'll be offering, obviously, professional learning throughout related to that. But these are the general buckets that we are tasked with. Lots of other things that come onto our plates throughout the year, but these are the primary areas of guidance and support that we focus on. And then IDA discretionary funds. We have, I think as long as I've been at the department and probably even before that, we have offered what we call partnership grants for systemic change for preschool and K-12. And so that's an opportunity for districts, special education directors to apply for discretionary funds for plans and programs that they have that are really going to move the needle in the support of their students with disabilities. And so we leave it to them to kind of design the programming, and then we review applications. It's a competitive process, and then we'll fund them. So last year we were combined between preschool and K-12, I think almost $4 million, and we're looking to be somewhat around that again this year. But we will actually be phasing out those partnership grants as we've done them, because we realize that there is such a need statewide for behavioral supports. So that's where a lot of those discretionary funds are kind of going to be reallocated. It will still be kind of a competitive process, but I'll let April kind of share about that, because she's leading the work on what we want to
The
offer.
number one piece of feedback we hear from you out in the school buildings is behavior is still the number one concern post-COVID. I don't know if you guys agree. Does everybody agree behavior is still probably the biggest concern? And so often we see a gap between what you guys can provide boots on the ground because you don't have maybe providers in the school building. So after some needs-based assessment that we did with your district leadership, we are allocating millions of dollars to ensure that every single school district has access to a licensed BCBA. And in part with that, meaning that we are going to pay for districts to hire a BCBA for them to be in their district full time. Or if you are a smaller district and maybe you can't support moving forward at that maintenance of effort, keeping that BCBA year after year, we can share a BCBA with another neighboring small rural district. If that's also not a possibility, then we're going to refund you and return monies to you to continue contracting with the BCBA. When we did our analysis of our 148 districts, we had 37 districts who had no access to a BCBA, which is absolutely unacceptable. We want to make sure that you guys have the professionals in your schools that have that knowledge and expertise to be able to mitigate that behavior, keep them in that least restrictive environment. And then if that's not working, then we can talk about a more intensive restrictive placement if necessary. But we wanted to give you guys that boots on the ground access to those BCBAs. So that procurement process is in works right now. As all of you know, some things at the department take some time. So be looking out for those BCBAs to be accessible in your district by the next school year.
One of the other initiatives we're really excited about, and this is being led by Jamie Seek, who is our speech, language, and related services coordinator or manager. Yes. Our titles shift, sorry. And she has, not only because she is an SLP, but obviously we hear from districts that the shortage is so impactful in the school buildings of your professionals, speech language pathologists being one. So she had started a procurement for tuition-free opportunities for candidates to go through a program, a speech language program, either University of Memphis or East Tennessee State University, and then work in a rural district following graduation. So it's up to that candidate to get into the program, but once they do, it would be tuition free through this. I know she's also excited to share that University of Memphis is also starting an SLPA program. So that is, of course, not a full master's program, but I believe it would be for bachelor's. So that we're really just working to get those professionals out in the buildings, fill those vacancies that we know are really impacting you. And then we've got a couple other things that I don't know that special educators often know that these exist. Your school special or your district leads and special education directors hopefully know about these, but the state pays for access for free to Special Education Connect, which is just a one-stop shop for all kinds of legal information about current case law. There's lots of tips, searchable information about what's happening in special education. If you wanted to know about special transportation, you could do a search and it'll bring up everything related to case law, requirements, code. So it's a great one-stop shop. You have access to that. Your district leaders should have access to that. So just reach out if you don't know about it. And then the other thing that we just started mid-year last year was Direct Step, which is also offered by LRP, who is the vendor. But these are free e-courses and modules available to any special educator. You just need to create a unique user ID and password, and then you have access to, I can't remember how many modules there are, probably up to maybe 100. And it's all special education law, essentially, or what is your obligation as a special education teacher, as a leader. There's multiple subjects that you can search. But if you don't know about those, reach out, and you can reach out to me as well. I can help you get set up with the link, because if there's certain topics you just don't feel super confident about, you can no doubt find them there.
I will say, anytime a district, anybody reaches out to me and they have a question, first place I'm going to is the Special Ed Connection, because then I can get the synopsis and all of the legal kind of case law that supports it before I give you my opinion. And sometimes I'll even just copy and paste it back to you and say, this is what's going on. That is a great one-stop resource for you to have bookmarked on your desktop.
Hello, Dr. Gold.
Hi, I took a 40-minute tour of the campus. It's lovely.
Thank you for joining us.
We introduced you, but do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, so I'm Dr. Allison Gauld. I am the Senior Manager of Professional Development and Low Incidence Disabilities. I am not a manager of Directions or Google.
I'm going to turn, I know April mentioned this, but she can go into much greater detail and share the great things that are happening with Project RAISE.
Yes, so 3 years ago, we were awarded a school-based mental health federal grant. Thankfully, this is not one of those federal grants that our current federal government has rescinded, so very thankful for that. But our whole goal around Project RAISE is to ensure that every single rural district has at least one full-time school psych, school counselor, and school social worker. We have 59 partnering districts, but we have 93 rural counties in the state of Tennessee. Does anybody know if they're part of Project RAISE in this room? So, if you're not a part of Project RAISE and you know you're a rural district, you should be. One, because we give out retention and recruitment bonuses every year. This past year, we gave our districts $25,000 to ensure that they have school counselors, school psychs, and school social workers. But our scope is really trying to ensure that we have the mental health faculty to provide mental health and early intervention supports across the state. We also have a tuition reimbursement similar to the SLP. So if you have candidates who want to be SLPs, you're going to get in touch with Jamie Seek. But if you have candidates that are in our rural districts who want to become school psychologists, tuition free, we have that as well. So please reach out to us. I think we have 19 candidates who are starting in the fall at one of our approved programs. They are staying and working in their current districts. Their districts are being flexible with them to be able to do their clinical hours and practicum. So really excited about where we're going and really changing that landscape around mental health supports in Tennessee. So, but feel free, reach out if you're not sure about it. I was just on a phone call on the way over here with a SPED director who's like, I have somebody who wants to go back to school. Fantastic, let's get them into a program and let's pay for their tuition.
Awesome. All right, you want to share about some of the work we do?
Sure. So one of the things we do that I think will benefit everybody in this room in some way is we engage in lots of virtual opportunities for you to meet with the experts and have conversations. They're called a variety of things: community of practice, office hours. The SLP one is called Let's Talk About Speech and Language, because why not? Let's talk, right? And so really and truly, these are your chance to get on, and there is like a topic, but it is flexible, meaning we have a topic to get us started with conversation, but it's about you being able to talk with other people that are doing similar things across the state. The reality is sometimes we're the only person in our position, in our school, or in our district. This is your chance to have a team and be able to meet with that team pretty regularly. It's monthly for most of them. Some are about every 6 weeks because holidays and things get in the way. And so there's 3 of them that are here. One of them is really designed for those assessment specialists, but of course that includes your speech language pathologist, your school psychologist. There may be other people that are having to really step in some way, and they have one of those licenses, or maybe a special ed director that needs to make sure that the contractor that they have on one of those licenses understands the expectations. And so that is something you might want to have them participate in. Also, the list talk about speech is a great opportunity for your speech language pathologists, your speech language teachers, and your speech language assistants to learn a little bit more about the practice and the difference between those roles and what is legally allowed, what is not legally allowed, and then what is best practice. And then we have community of practices around RTI squared. And that's really a great chance for you to learn about how we support all learners before waiting for them to fail and then panicking that they need special education.
I don't know if we have a slide for this, so I'm going to just chime in here. So we have a contract with Triad Vanderbilt, who also does an educator community of practice. So any special educator, general education teacher who wants to join that, it's all around behavioral strategies and supports that you can implement really as a preventative model, or as you're having to complete a functional behavioral assessment. That is a monthly get together with our experts at Vanderbilt through their Triad program. So if you would like to join that, they are starting it off again in the fall. Feel free, again, email me. Let me get you that link to sign up. We also have a BCBA community of practice group. So if you have a BCBA, you know a BCBA, oftentimes our BCBAs are trained clinically and they don't always know special education law. So we want to give them the tools and the knowledge to be able to perform all the duties that we need them to do in a general education classroom or special education classroom. So feel free, reach out to me. We'll get you signed up for that. If any of you are district leaders, if you have a principal who maybe is a new principal who hasn't dabbled in special education, we also have a leadership webinar series for school building principals that they can join so they can learn about all the things that you do and what their role as an LEA really is. Have you ever been in a meeting with a principal and they just kind of sat there and they were typing the whole time? That's really not their role as the LEA, and we want to equip them with the knowledge and skills to function as an LEA in those IEP meetings. So feel free, email me, I'll send you all of those links so you can get all your team members signed up.
You'll find that throughout Tintan in general, but often they're not for the school year. So the ones April mentioned are for the school year, but there are a lot that are a 4 or 6 week series, and they are by a very specific narrow topic. So please go on to that Tennessee Technical Assistance Network because all those opportunities will be listed as they are available.
And we'll get to that slide. I do have a link for that. Do you want to share some of the topics of your COPs for assessment specialists?
So this year we really focus on building out our content based on data we've derived from your districts. So good, bad, or ugly, right? We take data from districts. A big priority this year is around developmental delay evaluations. How many of your districts as special education teachers do you guys do the developmental delay evaluations? I know that happens a lot. You don't want to admit it to me right now, but that's okay. We want to make sure that we are appropriately evaluating students under developmental delay, and the big piece that we're seeing is we're using one developmental profile to evaluate and make them eligible. We're going to take a much harder stance coming into this next school year on that. So if you see that, especially as a special education teacher, I don't know if you've ever taken one of those reports. How do you write an IEP from one measure, right? It makes it really difficult on you to actually serve that child appropriately and in the best setting if they're really using limited amount of data to make those decisions. We're also doing some stuff pulling from our due processes, our mediations and administrative complaints. The most popular topics we ever do are the legal topics. So we're going to bring in our attorneys and they're going to tell you the trends around our administrative complaints, our mediations and our due processes of the ones who went all the way to, I think I mentioned before, we had 166 administrative complaints this past school year. Only 37 had findings, which I think is an incredible statistic on behalf of you. That means you guys are doing incredible work out there. For the majority of our administrative complaints, there are no findings, or they're thrown out because they're not relevant, or the parent's asking them to be retained or promoted, and it's not something appropriate to be presented in front of an administrative complaint, right? So we're going to be doing that one, and then we're going to be doing some other file reviews and pulling examples of best practices as well as some non-examples of what that looks like for assessment specialists. So anybody can attend. That means special education teachers as well. I know often in some of our rural districts, you guys are the ones presenting the reports to parents and doing the eligibility meetings without the assessment specialist. That's not wrong. You can do that. I would love for you to attend as well to equip you with the knowledge that you need to do that effectively.
Oh, and you're up again.
Oh,
This is your favorite topic.
This is probably my favorite topic. This, when this initiative started, it was 2.5 years ago, and it was this pipe dream of ensuring that districts had a wide breadth of assessments. So we now have a signed, executed contract with Pearson called the Digital Assessment Library for Schools. In short, it's called the DALLS. And it gives you, even special education teachers, a suite of 42 plus assessments for free. There's no cost to districts. So there are cognitive assessments, achievement tests, there are developmental profiles, speech language evaluations, fine and gross motor, social emotional, adaptive. There is everything in this suite of assessments, and it's for free. Speaking of which, if you're a special education director, this applies to you too. If you are talking to assessment specialists, if you need a specific tool, you can use as many of these assessments as you want for free. That means you're no longer having, I can only give one achievement test. No, you can give 16 and they're all for free.
You don't have to drive it across the district.
And you can give each one multiple times. So you're not limited for that assessment either.
So we have already incurred all the costs for this. It is unlimited, free for districts to use. We have the contracts for 3 years. So please utilize that. There's also a mechanism for you to administer some assessments electronically. We'll have some training starting in the next 2 weeks for users. Your SPED directors have already been notified. Again, I sent out a survey last week. And so please feel free. Any questions that you have for us moving forward, send them over to me. We're really excited about what this will do for districts and the cost that we're assuming on your behalf.
Are these assessments only for school psychologists, or are they for SPED teachers that we are able to get?
How many of you in this room do achievement tests for? So let's say you're coming up to your annual IEP and you would like to administer an achievement test and you've been trained to do so. You absolutely can administer through this library an achievement test, absolutely. There are developmental profiles that are included, so keep in mind most assessments have varying qualifications. So like a cognitive test. If you're just a SPED teacher, I say just a SPED teacher, you may not have the qualifications in terms of credentials to administer it, but most SPED teachers are qualified to administer achievement tests and developmental profiles. If you've been trained on those are included. So if you come to where you would like to do maybe a pre-post for a PLET or a PLAF, I can't say that, my mouth does not do PLAF, right? But if you'd like to do a pre-post for an IEP, you can do that using an achievement test or a developmental measure that we have included, absolutely. We'll just need to get you logged into the system as a user, and that should be really easy for your district admin to get you signed up for, okay? Perfect. No, you're fine.
While you get to Toby, just real quick with that, there is confusion. What's a cognitive, what's an achievement test, what's a developmental profile? And so this is again where I'll say that community of practice is helpful even if you're not an assessment specialist, because you can learn and understand the difference between these, how they are used, what they are used for appropriately, what they're used for maybe inappropriately, and how to avoid that so that you can grow professionally in your ability to really bring that team together and facilitate those conversations.
It's not really a question. I'm a DIALS admin, and so if you're an administrator, you can give special ed teachers the appropriate credentials, and it limits you access to like the achievement test or the rating scales that you're allowed based off of your degree to administer. And I can give the school psychs and speech language the ones that they're allowed to administer, so it lets us put them in there and only give them access to what they're allowed to administer.
It's been a hot minute since I've been out in district, so It's thank you. I appreciate that. But I think it's really important that what Dr. Gall just said is that it sinks in for us is we've had several different administrative complaints this past year that we were involved in where we unfortunately had personnel who exceeded their scope and were administering assessments outside of what would be allowed, and parents got savvy to that and started filing administrative complaints. So within the Q Global and Q Interactive, it should tell you this is what the assessment will do, here's the age ranges it could be used for, and here's your qualifications you must have. Please stick to that because we don't want to open yourselves up to dispute resolution if you're unfortunately exceeding what your scope will allow, okay?
And I will just add, so for our leadership in the room, I think we understand the difference between a school psychologist and a special education teacher, but where we do see some confusion still in the field, on behalf of Jamie Seek, is the difference between a speech language pathologist, a speech language teacher, and a speech language assistant. Only the speech language pathologist should have that full access for evaluation. So just know, if you're a leader in the room, that is an area you might want to go and make sure you have people with the right license, because we tend to call people things that aren't necessarily matched to their license when we're in the schools.
We have just seen another administrative complaint is around the word diagnostician. Does anybody have diagnosticians in their district? No? Of course you don't. One. Be cautious with that, is because we don't license diagnosticians in the state of Tennessee. Other states do, but we don't. But making sure that your job description, if you are a diagnostician or you have a diagnostician, really clearly identifies what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do, what their roles are. We've had a recent administrative complaint where a diagnostician was administering an ADOS. Anybody familiar with the ADOS assessment? Exceeded the scope of what a diagnostician is allowed to do, and then there's a finding for the district. So making sure you're adhering to those examiner publisher manuals for each individual assessment.
Let's go to the big news.
Oh yeah. We have a statewide conference coming in October. We got a lot of feedback. I don't know if anybody participated in the regional events that we did last fall and winter. We did them in East, Middle, and West. We got some feedback, particularly from special education directors, that said that they would prefer a statewide conference, a single conference, again, similar to PI. We haven't done a single statewide conference since PI back in, was it 2018, 19 was the last one we did before COVID? Yeah. It will not be quite the scale that PI was. We have to build it up. But this year it is going to be at the Chattanooga Convention Center. It will hold about 1,000 participants, I think is what we've booked. So you will hear from members of our team, members of Joanne Runyon's team who supports the student support side, accelerated learning team, IDEA data team, so everybody that has to do with any kind of student support. We also are requesting that we hear from you all. You all are the experts doing this every day. It's been a minute since most of us have been out in the field doing this. We want to know what's going great in your district. What are the practices that you are finding, amazing, to make amazing differences in the lives of students? So we have an RFP that's open. We'll probably extend it a little bit because currently it is set to end at the end of this month, early August. So if you have some great idea or something that you're doing in your district that you want to promote and get in front of other educators, we really encourage you to fill out an RFP, and we'll obviously, review those and then assign them and have you come and present. Our TINTAM partners will also be there, our Tennessee Technical Assistance Network partners, who are kind of an extension of the department and lead the work in many different specific areas, and we'll get to a slide about that as well. So we're really hoping that this will be an amazing event for educators and directors. I will say the 2 days that would be most relevant to special education and even gen ed teachers would be the Tuesday and the Wednesday, which would be the 28th and 29th of October. Those are going to be the main session days. The first day we're reserving for new special education directors, as April alluded to. We've got a lot of new folks coming into that role. I think last count was close to 25 maybe that are going to be new to that position for the 25-26 school year. So we really want to be there to provide resources and supports to them specifically so that they are equipped to serve in their new role as leaders of the district in special education. So we will, in addition to that first Monday specific to them, we're also going to be rolling out just a quarterly opportunity virtually for directors to connect, new directors to connect, so that we can do some cross-divisional support for them. But then the last day of that is the 30th, which will just be a half day, and that's going to be mostly for administrators, building leaders. This would be a great opportunity for any principals to attend this day. It's going to be focused exclusively on special education law, those obligations of the district, of building leaders, of leaders to implement IDEA through the state and federal regulations. And that will be led by our Office of General Counsel that day. So.
And while it's not as large as PI, when we say that, that's because the PI conference had built up quite a reputation, and so a lot of people came. But we're not saying it's smaller and that you have to limit your participation as a district. So if as a district you have a large number of people that want to come, we have not put a limit on that. The limit is by the venue, not by us. So, please, register when those come out and think about who you want to attend, but know that we are not limiting you.
Yeah, and we really have an opportunity for about, I think it's up to 20 sessions, I want to say, per block, and we're doing 4 blocks a day. So we're hoping to fill as many of those as we can with you all. Sessions from educators across the state, and then, like I said, we will be obviously divvying up the work on that as well, and some of our other divisional team members. So please come join us, end of October. I mentioned this, so Tennessee Technical Assistance Network. We've got 6 partners with this network that work kind of on behalf of the department. And they have very specialized roles, but they are absolutely free support to schools and educators. Most of it is for more system level, not specific to student support, although April's contract that she manages is student specific. But these are also experts in their realm. So if you have questions about assistive technology, if you're not sure about an assistive technology evaluation and you need somebody to help you with best practices to implement that or to administer that, you can reach out to the assistive technology team. We've got Triad Autism, and they are experts in the resources, the practices to support autistic learners. They do a lot of professional learning opportunities. They generate a ton of content that's available. All of this is available on the Tennessee Technical Assistance Network. That link will take you to the main page that will allow you to actually submit a referral if there is something that you need support with in one of those specific areas, but also you can access the content that's been created by these partners. Anything you want to?
I will add, much like the dolls for assessment, there is an assistive technology lending library that is also free of charge. They even send you the postage to return anything after you've used it. So it truly is free of charge. And the library is quite expansive, from very low-tech options, meaning no batteries, no power required, to very sophisticated. And then they are willing to take requests. So if there's something that specifically you would like to be able to try and use with the student, they are more than happy to consider that request and try and get that in the hands of the student to make that difference for them. So that gives you another free library of tools that might be just what you need to support one of your learners.
All right. I'm going to share some of the resources. When you get this PowerPoint, these should be hyperlinks to them. Some are new, kind of hot off the press, and some are not. It just may be things that may not have made their way to you. I know it's often that chain of communication that gets lost to the actual practitioners. So I cannot read that from here. So I'm just winging it with, I think we have a lot of good stuff on secondary transition.
There is. Some of it is going to be very specific around how to engage students in work-based learning and make those decisions. Not all students of an IEP should be in the special education versions of work-based learning. We should start with the general education work-based learning. And so there's a tool to help you navigate that and navigate that conversation internally with your other teachers that are certified in work-based learning. The same as tools for engaging in career and technical education in a meaningful way and engaging parents. So those are a few of the tools, but a lot of these tools are around really thinking about how to create a transition plan that is not simply compliant, but is going to ensure that the students have outcomes after high school. It's really about changing our thinking from graduation diplomas being our end goal to actually being the launch pad for their life. We are just the prep program for that moment. And so a lot of these tools help you engage in those conversations in a meaningful way. There are a couple tools listed here that are about compliance. There is a compliance indicator for meeting transition planning called Indicator 13. It requires that we be 100% accurate. We're at 12%.
Statewide.
There's a little room for improvement, folks. So I strongly encourage that you pull down some of these tools because the expectation is 100%. There is no leniency with that. And it is really heartbreaking when you get a finding and you have to have an IEP simply because you have an incomplete plan. Nobody wants to have that moment, so this can help you proactively make sure that what you are proposing in your IEP meets compliance. And then, like I said, several of them will go further. So the one for indicator 13.
We've got one for 14 at the bottom, the FAQ on 14.
The one at the bottom is 14. The indicator 13, a lot of it's going to be in the top, but it is actually just right off the press. So it might not be linked, and we can certainly get you that link. And then indicator 14 is also a required indicator, but it doesn't require 100%. That is the measure of what we do, though. Indicator 14 says, how did schools do? Because indicator 14 says, what are kids doing 1 year after they leave your school? And in some areas, we're doing really well. And in some areas, we're not. So currently, for instance, if a student has an intellectual disability, they have a 40% chance of being engaged in anything, even volunteering after high school. And if we learn nothing else from COVID, we learned that being at home all day, every day is not a life, that's just existing. And so indicator 14 tool here at the bottom is to help us make sure that our students leave our schools and don't just exist, but they live, they thrive, and they grow. And so truly, Catherine Bledsoe, who is our secondary transition coordinator, has put together a suite of tools that will talk to you as a special educator, talk to your leaders, but also talk to parents, the students themselves in their planning, and help you coordinate those adult service agencies.
You want to talk about the FAQ that just came out and the new rule?
Yeah, many of you know that there was a bill passed, and I believe it was promulgated in April, I think 15th, that evaluation reports would be provided to parents 48 hours prior to the meeting. We have created an FAQ document. Most of those other documents that you see up there have already been long existing resources for you, including that shortened days, informal removals. That is a very big hot topic right now across the state. If we are sending students home informally, saying parents come pick them up, and we're not documenting that as an in-school or an out-of-school suspension, please cease that practice. We have a lot of advocates and attorneys who are watching right now, and parents who are counting every time you call to come pick up their students with disabilities, as we could be infringing on FAPE by not allowing them to stay at school, or putting in other proactive preventative approaches through an FBA, a BIP. So please look through these documents. All the other ones, I believe, are older documents for your perusal, but any questions regarding these, feel free to reach out to us.
The only other one that's newer is the one on the bottom there, and that is around endorsements and course codes and understanding the difference, most specifically when it comes to students whose least restrictive environment requires that they be taught in a special education setting, and that is where their entire standards-based exposure is, as well as intervention. And so that will clarify the difference between all those settings and what to plan for when looking at endorsements, and help you understand why certain endorsements are necessary for certain courses, even if the course catalog allows other endorsements. Basically, what it comes down to is that the course catalog is about the course content, but it doesn't account for special education services. A special education service does not account for achieving your standards-based content. And so the two must be carried in consideration when making decisions if that least restrictive environment is not in the general education setting. And so this is to help clarify that. Hopefully it will help everybody understand their role and their expectations. But certainly if you don't understand, I am your go-to for that.
And the timelines in special education is not a new resource. Our Office of General Counsel actually created that, but we think again, sometimes these just don't get to the hands of the practitioners who actually need that information. That is a great resource for when do I have to have an IEP signed? When do I have to offer a prior written notice?
Is it calendar days or school days, and how many?
After I get consent, when do I have to meet? So that is a great resource. If you're like us, we can't find things on our own webpage sometimes. So we were hoping to kind of link some new and old here for you. I will say too, we're also trying to build out the content that we create at the department on our team, posting it on the Tennessee Technical Assistance Network as kind of a one-stop shop. So it would be the things our partners create, but then also content that we as the programming team create. So hopefully that might be a little bit easier to navigate. It's still finishing the final stages of development, but all of those tabs will be open pretty soon, so you can just go to those. We didn't link, and I didn't think about this until just now, we updated for any of you that use the IEP rubric for kind of your quality measure of IEPs, if you're familiar with that. We've updated that.
It's not on the website yet.
We just got a link for it today, live. So we can, yes, so we can share that. But it really is a great tool for you to use and do your own self-assessment of the IEPs that are developed by you or colleagues. I know a lot of district leaders use it, and it walks through each portion of the IEP and what meets compliance from the very basement level of what is required to really what will push that student to actually achieve if you've written a well-written, thoughtful
and here's why
IEP.
that's a really important document, is compliance for sure we all understand. But compliance doesn't make you legally sound because there are other cases involved, such as Andrew versus Douglas County, which went to the Supreme Court. And in that finding, it said that an IEP needs to be developed in such a way that the students make progress. Compliance doesn't talk about progress. It talks about making sure boxes are filled. To understand both, that rubric will help you not only meet compliance for our APR, our annual performance report, but it will give you the information to meet the larger legal review law, such as Andrew versus Douglas County.
I'm sorry, you will be sending out a link to the IEP rubric, you said?
Sure. Dr. Clark, would I just email that to you?
And it should be in the special ed director's update.
Yes, that goes out in August, I think, that news.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can send it to you, Dr. Clark, to disseminate?
If you can send us a document with that information, we'll post the document on the educator resources where this PowerPoint is today.
Oh, wonderful.
I appreciate that. I see a lot of people using this PowerPoint right now. They're on their screens.
Oh, good, okay.
So we will post if you send us a document with the link or any other thing you want us to add, we'll post it on educator resources.
Sounds good. We're constantly creating things, so we'll try to keep you informed.
And our newsletter is the best way month to month to get the latest releases, and anybody can sign up for that on our website.
Mm-hmm. If you can find it.
Yeah, it's in the About Us newsletters, but if you can't find it, let us know.
Just, we're really wrapped up, but we appreciate you all so much and the work that you do every day. It is not easy, and in fact, it's often incredibly hard work that you do. We are here. I know we are often thought of as the state, but we are people. We are available. We want to be supports to you all. Each of us came from, working in school districts ourselves. So certainly use us as a resource and let us help connect you with, if we don't have the answer, connecting you with somebody who can, or connecting you with resources that are available to you. Because as we said, I don't think everything always finds its way to the boots on the ground folks and the practitioners that really need a lot of the resources that are created. So we left some time for questions.
I have a question I'd like to start with because it relates to some of the information you've given. We have people in the room who work in education but are not in K-12 public schools. We also have a number of people in the few thousand that have engaged with the collaborative that do not work in public education. So when you talk about the library, for example, of technology or other kinds of resources, are they available to people who are not working in K-12 public education?
No. Our contracts are really specific that we serve public school
And charters.
and charter schools, but public schools and those employees and those students. Now, for a lot of our students who are potentially parentally privately placed or in homeschool settings, if they are being evaluated by their local LEA or the LEA in which that private or homeschool resides, and it just happens to be a public school that's doing that assessment, they have the digital assessment library to utilize, but we do not provide that level of service to private schools outside of public schools.
What about Tennessee Department of Corrections?
Absolutely, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is if there is a student whose placement is in a private or residential school because the public school IEP team determine that is their least restrictive environment, that's where the lines get a little blurry because they are still under the enrollment and purview of the public school. So if you are working in one of those schools or those facilities and the student is still enrolled in their district, you might have a little more gray area in which to play with some of these resources because it's how the student came to you and basically who's funding the student and how that decision came.
Thank you.
And our limits aren't because we don't like private school or parent choice, it's because we are IDA funded, which is for public school.
This is not a gotcha question and a loaded question. This is coming from an educator who's worried about education. With all the changes coming down with funding from the federal government, how is that going to affect, and forgive me for saying it, my babies, my kids that I deal with, especially our most severe and profound? What you see in your office, how is that going to translate to the kiddos I serve? Can you elaborate or anything? You may not have any, you may be playing it day to day too. Is there anything or guidance you can give us? Because I've had parents ask about that question as well. I'm concerned about it too. And I really can't, I don't know what to say. I'm hoping you have more guidance on that.
For the IDEA budget, it has been approved. So we are fully funded, I think it's essentially what we were last year in IDEA.
And that was also true in the Big Beautiful Bill. IDA funds were not part of that.
So that IDA funding is not just for the coming year, it is indefinite at this point, the IDEA
It hasn't
funding.
been in a bill yet that it's been collapsed, no. So right now it is still funded through its own grant and its own law.
And to segue on that, are there any funds that you see that will be ended or restricted that you anticipate?
We only deal with IDA funding, so if there's any other funding sources that may be impacted, that would be, and we can certainly connect you though to those departments, but we are only under IDEA.
IDEA,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and in special ed, the only things that we've seen impacted is some of our grant opportunities. Like we said, Project RACE has continued. Some of the grants are just shorter term than they've been in the past. And some are no longer like they used to be, like annually they'd come up and you could apply or not apply, and we haven't seen them. But those are those like extra funds, not that base level funding.
When did you say the SPED conference registration would start?
It's supposed to open the 1st of August. So we were actually working with a logistics team that's helping us build out the registration site. So fingers crossed that should be live that first week of August.
This is a question for clarification. I did 8-9 years in general education. This is going to be my 3rd year in special education. And it's genuinely a question out of curiosity, and you may not have an answer for it. I've heard from parents, they're concerned that, in Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention, there is a max for those sizes of intervention groups. But when we get into the Tier 4 interventions, I may have an intervention group of 17 students. Is that something that the state is looking at in putting a cap on the small group size for those Tier 4 interventions so that we are guaranteed more student-centered and student-focused instruction?
Can I say one thing? And I know you want to talk about this. So here's my rub with what you just said. Not what you said, but in practice, is when we say special education should be the most intensive support intervention, and then we move them from a group of 5 to a group of 17. How is that the most intensive intervention? And when we're saying that they require specially designed instruction, and then they were potentially, and this is what we see too on the evaluation side, they're maybe making progress in that Tier 2, Tier 3, but we're saying they're not making enough progress to close the gap, and then we move them to another group where you have maybe 5 or 6 different grade levels, potentially, and then students with different skills and different needs, and then we see a huge regression in that mastery or progress towards those skills. Services, and Allison is certainly the expert here, but services are always a team decision. If you get to a place where you come to a student, nothing requires, and this would be the same, we hear this all the time, April, students with SLD, they must have an intervention on their IEP. Well, they may, but it could still be a general education intervention that we are providing if it's working. They may need specially designed instruction in other settings, maybe in inclusion support while they're, working on grade level standards. But I think we have this mindset that everything must be pulled out, and it must be this special education intervention that's happening in the same manner that we would say every student with autism needs a social skills class. We would never say that. But for SLD, something, and I don't know if this was previous guidance or maybe our old RTI framework maybe misconstrued this, but services and supports in order to make progress and for that child to receive FAPE in their LRE is always a team decision. So I even know before I came to the department, we often made decisions on placement based on how they were performing in that intervention. And then we said, they're making progress. Yes, there's a disability because they weren't making enough progress, but we want to keep them on this trajectory. So we're going to provide this and this now, and let's see if we can make some headway. So I think we have to really kind of push that assumption that now that they're in special education, general education initiatives are done. And I also, and I know Dr. Haley Richardson, our Director of Intervention, would say this too, I don't know if you guys have ever seen my SLD training, but I really want to flip that 85% are going to respond to tier 1, and then you have 15%, that whole graphic, that inverted triangle. Oh, I hate that graphic because I've never worked in a school where the demographics fell like that. The majority of the time I would have 40% of my kids who needed tier 2 or tier 3, and then we would say, we don't have enough staff to do it. That's not a tier 2 or tier 3 issue, that is a tier 1 issue. And now we need to talk about how we're going to beef up tier 1 supports and be proactive on this. And I think too, when we, and you can tell I feel very strongly about this if you haven't heard it in my voice, but every single person in your building should be considered an interventionist. Why is it just the 2 people who are funded by title funds are the only ones who can intervene with kids? And then we say, well, no, you're not low enough to participate, but we see those gaps and we just sit back and we wait, and then we put them into special education, and now you have 17 kids in a classroom and you're not able to make reasonable progress, and then your SPED director probably comes to you and says, what are you doing, right? We have to really empower our general education teachers to know that they are the content experts, and we need to utilize and maximize their expertise to move kids where we need them to go. I know you guys all have capes underneath your beautiful outfits, but there is no way that you could serve 17 kids in one classroom for 45 minutes, 5 days a week, and move them all where they need to go in a reasonable time frame without the support of general education.
Yeah, I mean, that's really why we had the service delivery guidance around IEP. 1, I mean, we weren't compliant, but 2, we locked ourselves in how we wrote services. So we'd see people say, well, they need English inclusion. So then they're like, well, so I'll have to put, 17 students with an IEP in this English class with these 5 general ed and call it inclusion, which by the way is not inclusion because the math doesn't work there. I know that was an English class, not a math class, but talk to your math person. But we do that because we locked ourselves in when what they needed was maybe these 3 kids needed support in reading comprehension, and these 4 students needed support in basic reading, like understanding the code and how that works. And these 4 actually need support in paying attention, not actually reading. It's that they don't understand reading because they are somewhere else while they're reading, right? And so we don't get down to the core of it. We just are like, oh, you all needed special ed in reading, so this is the reading block, and we put them there. If we get specific about what service they need, you have flexibility to look at it. Reading comprehension is not an English activity. Reading comprehension is a science activity, it is a social studies activity, it is a CTE activity, it is all day. So we can provide these 3 students support here, these 2 students support here. We need to get more flexible on that. And part of it's getting really honest about LRE. Where is the student's LRE? Not where is the teacher available to support the student, but where is the LRE? And so there's a lot of work we've been doing on that. We're continuing to push out that work. The Teaching All Students initiative that we've had, I know that Toby's in that now. There's a lot of conversations about what do we really need to do and what are we really expecting and how are we doing that. So honestly, the starting point is conversations internally about what do we know to be true about the learners and what do we know to be true about the way we're servicing them and where is that gap? Because there is a habit of service, not a needed service, usually driving things. But as far as the question around will we have a cap? The funding formula gives the ratios. The trick is in special ed, you don't have 17 students with the exact same anything. And so they don't come up as the same code. And so you can't calculate the cap because it's like, well, 2 at an 8, which is at a 60 ratio, and 3 at a 4, like nobody knows. So that's where that gets a little convoluted. And then anytime you have a paraeducator in or out of that space, it changes your formula. So the cap is honestly not something that's doable. And we keep looking at it, but it's just not doable. So what we're encouraging is that we instead look at our practices for the reasons that Dr. Ebinger talked about, and for the fact that we ourselves are writing services based on our schedules, not on student needs. And that is why students are not making progress.
I'll say one more thing about that. As somebody who is in files all the time, another rub for me, especially not only SLD students, but I think it's also for our OHI students, it is a one-stop shop in terms of every kid gets reading intervention, every kid gets math intervention. Where is that individualization coming from? And sometimes we come to those, especially for SLD, we don't have math RTI, so we're just gonna pull them in under reading and then we're gonna give them all of the things. Then how do you know what they really need if we haven't appropriately evaluated on the front end and intervene to show that they're not making progress? So again, I really encourage you. You guys are the ones who can somewhat put up those barriers for our general education teachers to say they need help all over. What data is driving those decisions as opposed to convenience or that the teacher just wants a break, right? And I know that you guys coming into classrooms, more people, sometimes it's better, but it's not always better. And we really need to have data that's driving the decisions around that the student requires specially designed instruction. And it's not just because it's going to give them a leg up, it is truly required for access to that general education curriculum.
Here's a statistic of why we could do this as the whole session. If a student is a nonverbal speaker, they're going to need assistive technology to communicate. What do we see for speech hours? 98% of the time.
I know.
What is it we see?
Twice a week, 30 minutes.
Right. Do you know how many hours it's going to take that user to have the same exposure to language interaction that they would have if they were a toddler who used verbal speech? 84 years. That twice a week at 30 minutes is going to take 84 years to get them where they would have been at the age of 5 had they had a communication system in place. Anybody here signed up to work with a student for the next 84 years? This is why that matters. That learner needs a very different day than someone who is learning to say S at the end and beginning of words. But their IEP has the same service. These are the conversations we need to have, and that's just one statistic to help you launch that conversation internally.
And I would say accommodations as well. We often see a lot of cookie cutter accommodations on IEPs, and sometimes it is just, like a dumping ground of supports, but who's overseeing the data to show that accommodation has been beneficial to the student, that it really is changing their access.
And who's taking the data that the student doesn't like it? Anybody who's ever proctored an assessment for Read Aloud and you have the kid that raises their hand and says, "Excuse me, can I go ahead without you?" Does that student need Read Aloud? Or what about extended time,
But Dr.
right?
Called, here's the thing, and I know as the person and you too, you also, I get the most parent phone calls, advocate phone calls at the department. I know that you're close behind me. Is the parents call and they say, "I want my kid to have Read Aloud. I want my kid to have extended time." How do you combat that without data? If you come to those meetings with data, my favorite one recently was the parent called and says, "My child has dyslexia and I think they need to have a one-on-one." So my favorite conversation, it might have been a Friday afternoon, right? And I was like, "Ma'am, please tell me why you think your child with dyslexia needs a one-on-one." Well, because they'll understand more. I said, ma'am, typically your child's profile would not constitute a need for a one-on-one, but certainly call an IEP meeting for them to consider that request. But that is your only obligation with the parent or advocate or attorney comes and says, you need to do this. You're going to document where, your prior written notice that you've considered it, but you have to have data to support either the inclusion or the refusal to include it. And that's where districts are missing that, is if they say, I want read aloud or extended time, you don't have, and sometimes that means you have to reconvene and collect data and come back, but have the data to support. And if you need some fancy ideas for how to collect that data, reach out to me. I can give you all the tips and tricks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where's the data? And the students often give you quite a bit of data.
2 questions. First, updates on the special education framework. When is that coming out? Great. And then the second one, procedures regarding threat assessments. Will we have any procedures about that?
It has finally made its way through legal review. I feel like, I'm not going to say how long ago we submitted that. It has made its way through legal review. It is now in comms. They have given us a soft promise for being able to offer that at the beginning of the school year. So I would say by the end of August to be safe. And we have retitled it the Special Education Manual, because really it was never a framework.
It was never a framework.
It's more of just kind of like procedures. And we also are reworking the administrator's guide.
So there's a companion guide for administrators that really talks about their role in relationship to each of the components. And we are pretty deep in that. It's coming along pretty close behind.
So I'm hoping that also would be late August, ambitiously perhaps.
How many of you have been in a threat assessment last year? We know with the change in law around threats of mass violence that there's been some changes. We've had 2 due processes this past year around threat assessment for students with disabilities. So if you have not attended any of our trainings around the intersection of MDRs and threat assessments, please do so. I know at our October conference, I will be leading that session again. If you just want the PowerPoint slides, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to share, but really briefly, remember that students with disabilities are still entitled to FAPE. So if a student with a disability makes a threat of mass violence, the first thing you should do is a threat assessment, right? We must do our threat assessment. You may be a part of that or you may not be, right? Nobody raised their hands. I think one person raised their hands that they were part of a threat assessment, right? A couple of you. And that's okay that you're not a part of it, but you have to stay in consultation with the people who are, because if it is found to be a credible or valid threat, what's the next step you have to do for a student with disability? MDR. Don't forget that piece. And administrators don't believe they have to do the MDR because it is state law around threats of mass violence, but MDRs are a federal requirement. So that's that confusion around state and federal requirements. So threat assessment happens first, because if it's not a valid or credible threat, are we able to suspend, expel? No. And then we may not need the MDR, depending on how many days they've been suspended previous to the threat of mass violence. So it really depends on the outcome of the threat assessment if we need to do the MDR, but the MDR is so important. One of the biggest pieces that came out of due process, it was out of Williamson County. If anybody's from Williamson County, I'm sorry about you, but they failed to do the threat assessment. Okay, and this was not for a student with a disability, by the way. So this was a case outside of special education law. But failed to do the threat assessment, even though they said it wasn't a valid or credible threat, they still decided to expel her, okay? And then the big piece of that is the superintendent, after they met with the parents, are like, oh, you're good, just come on back. It was arbitrarily implementing their policy. So we have to be consistent too. What we do for one, we do for all. And I hear that all the time for our students with intellectual disabilities. Oh, I know he didn't understand that. I know he didn't mean it. We don't need to suspend, expel.
You do need to do it for students with intellectual disabilities because they are a student.
Yes, we treat them all the same.
And we need to have high expectations for all students.
Yes, and if they break the code of conduct, even though we know Johnny, he didn't understand it, I have examples of that, we still follow our policies, hold the MDR, and if you say it's not a manifestation, that's fine. But make sure we're treating all of our students equitably and we're not treating them differently, okay? And just because they have a conversation with the principal or the parents come in, we're not gonna say, oh, we'll undo that suspension expulsion because I know they didn't mean it. Follow your codes of conduct, follow your policies, and hold your meetings as you need to.
And again, that's for all students. So just to help with your conversations internally around those students with cognitive disabilities. And I'm very passionate about that, because if we say, oh, they don't need it, they don't understand it, we're also saying we don't believe that they are ever going to learn. We don't believe that they have any strengths as a learner. We don't believe in them as a human, and we don't believe in their right to be heard. And I don't think that's what anybody means, but when we say no, they don't need to account for their behavior, they don't need to have expectations, they don't need to be disciplined, we are also saying all those other things about those individuals. And I don't believe we believe them, but we are saying that. And so when you have a leader or somebody in your school that's struggling with discipline, explain to them that it's because you do believe so strongly in that person, that you want them to know that you know they're worth more than the behavior showed, and you know they can learn, and you know they can thrive. And the best way to help them is discipline, which, remember, the root of discipline is disciple. It is student, right? And so in that discipline, making sure that that student gets the chance to learn, grow, and thrive, as well as be heard for whatever it is that prompted the situation.
I know April promised that we would each share our own individual emails, but
it was a false promise.
I failed to do that. But this inbox can come to any of us. Michael Holman, who we mentioned earlier, mans this email inbox and reaches out to us when anything is relevant to our particular scopes.
You can just say, April said this. Yes. Can you connect me to April?
Yeah. Send this to April. Send this to Allison. Send it to Susan. Yeah. We'll get it.
Mm-hmm. And if you can't remember which one's which, he knows us.
But we so appreciate the opportunity to be here today, Dr. Clark.
So Ms. Susan Ussery, Dr. Gall, and Dr. Ebinger, thank you. This was a lot of stuff here, a lot of good information. Go to our website, find that PowerPoint, and you can access all those links. Okay? Thank y'all for being here.
Of course. Thank you.